All right, guys, welcome back. Let's make this guy move. Um, we've waited long enough, and I think it's time to get some actual motion in here. So, what we're going to do is, rather than go and write code in the same player stats, that's handling things like keeping track of the numbers and stuff. I want to make the motion be in a completely separate C# script. So, let's first thing go down here to the project tab, right click and create a new C# script. Now I'm going to name this before I do anything else, right? And it's going to be called player motion. So capitalize both letters, no spaces, player motion. When I hit enter, then it creates the thing, and the name goes in as the class name. Excellent. Double click it and it'll pop up as our new script over here in Visual Studio. First thing I'm going to do is take care of my brackets, make sure everything looks classy. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. What we are going to do now is we need to have some key presses. So I'm going to go in here to the update function. And basically what we need to do is capture key presses of up, down, left, right arrow keys, or WASD, for standard first-person shooter style movement. So I think we're going to use WASD first. So I'm going to throw an if statement in here. If, parentheses, brackets. So if input dot get key, yeah, as long as we hold the key, we want it to continue to trigger this, and we're going to have some forward motion there. And then the key that we're going to use right now, I'm going to move forward, so it's going to be key code dot w, and that should do it. Okay, now we are going to use a function that is, again, every piece of code that is part of Unity, everything that defines any of these components that we could have that we see in the inspector, everything that defines what a game object is, or anything that runs anything in Unity is all made in code with these classes. So, and those classes are available to us in these libraries. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to the transform. When we're talking about motion, what we're doing is we're changing the position of the character, right? So we're going to be somehow changing the X, Y, and Z position. We're not going to necessarily change the rotation, although we might want to do that. And we're certainly not going to be making the player scale to a larger or smaller size. So, but we are going to manipulate the numbers that are in this transform part. So the function that we're going to use lowercase t transform dot, and dot is going to allow us to get to the functions that are associated with the transform component over here. Transform dot, and now the function that we're going to use is called translate, capital T, translate. And that comes with some parentheses and a semicolon at the end. So before I tell you what goes inside the parentheses here to make this thing actually work, I want to talk about the word translate. So most of you are probably, when you think of the word translate, you're thinking of translating from one language to another. It's going from one to the next. And that's what really is at the heart of the word translate, is it's going from one place to another. So it's actually going to it's going to take the numbers right here. Right now, we are positioned at x0. That's side-to-side placement within the world. He's placed at the center of the world as far as the side-to-side motion. Y, he's positioned up 1 unit. That's why he's not, halfway down through the floor with his feet hanging out under the floor. He's on top of it, so he's up 1 unit. And the Z over here, as far as forward and backward, he's positioned still, again, at the center of the world. So we're going to translate that. That means we're not going to put in a new number for X and a new number for Z. We're actually going to say, take whatever number he's at and move it by a certain amount. Translate it. Don't just go to this new place. Translate from where he is by this amount. So what that looks like is we are going to put in here a vector 3 number. Remember how over in player stats, when we were saving numbers into strength, stamina, mana, we had to give it 3 numbers. The first one, comma, the second one, comma, the third one, comma. Now, what those are actually going to refer to, we're finally using a vector 3 for the actual purpose that it exists for. And that is to represent this number, the X, the Y, and the Z, those 3 numbers in a row. So what we have to do is we have to say the position, when we press the W key, what is supposed to actually happen? Is he supposed to move on the X-axis? That's sideways. No, we don't want to see that. W is not for that. Do we want to move in the Y-axis? That's up or down. No, that's not the motion we want from the W key. Do we want the Z key? Yes, he should be moving forward and backward. So we want to access the Z-axis. So what that means for us is that when we go here to our player motion script and we want it to translate based on the fact that we've pressed the key, the translation that we're going to have is 0 side-to-side movement on the X-axis, 0 up and down movement toward the sky or down into the ground, and then we are going to have a movement on the Z-axis. Yes, we are going to go forward. I just threw a number 1 in here, and that is horribly, horribly wrong. And here's why that's wrong. No matter what number we put in here, we're going to decide that we hate that number later. There's no chance of getting this right on the first time. So what we're actually going to want to do is, instead of trying to guess what the appropriate number is to put in here, how far should he move, when this thing happens? How far should we translate him forward? Instead of using a number 1, let's make a variable to hold this. And we'll make it a public variable so that over in Unity, while we're trying to get his motion to feel right, we don't have to keep going over to the code and typing new numbers in. We can actually just change the number in the inspector while we're playing. Like, we don't even have to take him out of play mode. We just change the number over there and see if it's better. So instead of this, let's go up to the top here, and I'm going to create a new variable. Let's make it a float variable. Let's make it a public float, because we want it to be available over in the Unity inspector. So public float, remember, for a floating point number. And I'm going to call it player speed. Okay, that exists. And now we're just going to use that instead of an actual number down here in our translate function, transform.translate. So just put in player speed. Done. Let's save that and go over to Unity and see what's happening. Okay, so here we are in Unity. Theoretically, nothing will happen when we press the W key, and that's because, anybody see it? Our new code is still not attached to our player. When we created the player stats script, we had to drop it on the onto the stack here in the inspector so that it became a component. And we can see that component, player stats. It's one of our scripts. Now we need the player motion script also to be over there. Notice we can see the player speed variable here, and it's 1. Let's just, it's 0. Let's put a 1 in and just see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to hit play. And there he is. Our camera's back behind him. So I'm going to hit W, and that's our forward. Here we go. Okay. He definitely moves. He kind of moves pretty fast. Yeah, he's taking off like a bullet there. So instead, here, let's just take his Z position here, since we don't have to go out of play mode. I can just take that and put him back to 0, right? Let's put our player speed at, instead of 1, let's say 0.1, and just, I don't know, we'll just see what that works. Now, when I press W, nothing happens, and that's because I've been clicking over here. if I want to type something into this, like if I want to, maybe I'm, instead of the player speed, maybe I'm going to type in the player name, right? And I want to use the double key because the W key because his name is Wally. Well, we don't want him moving forward while I type Wally into the name field. So since I've clicked out of the game panel here, none of my controls work. They're not putting controls into the game. They're putting controls into the editor in the inspector or wherever I'm pointed. So in order to make this work again, I'm just going to click back on the game tab. And now W. Okay, so now he's moving. I don't know, that seems fine to me. It's a little hard to tell just from watching him walk away from me if it's the right speed or not. But the main point is we have a number here. We can go in and mess with it. And you know, once the game is a little bit more full featured and it's looking and acting like we want, we can just adjust this number until it feels right. So good. Now what we need to do is have if statements for the other three key presses. This is going to be WASD, right? So I'm going to copy this, and I can pretty much just get the exact same thing I have here with transform.translate and player speed in the Z axis for my S key. So rather than doing WASD in the order that we say it, I'm just going to put the two if statements here that are for forward and backwards right next to each other. That's going to help my brain work on this. So W key press is going to be for move us forward, and the S key press is going to move us backward. How do we move backward? Well, that's actually really easy. If we're moving, if the number that we have in here is this is, I'm going to stop right in there in the middle of that. Notice that we have a 1 here. When we were messing with the game while it was in play mode a second ago, we changed this to 0.1. So why is it back to 1? Well, that's because any changes that you make while the thing is in play mode get wiped out. Like I can put 1,000, okay? It's 1,000. How fast does he move? Boom. He just went to warp speed and went off the map right there. And now when I hit watch right here, when I take it out of play mode, the player speed is going to go back to 1 when I take it. Here we come out of play mode and we're back to 1. So just know that any changes you make to your game at all while you're in play mode are not permanent. There is no way to save those changes. So, yeah, don't be making changes that you're really fond of, and don't be making tons and tons of changes while you're in play mode, or at least keep track of what you did to make the thing work. Okay. So over in play mode, we had 0.1 was the number that we had here. So when we're moving forward with the W key press, we're moving 0.1 forward. When we do the S, we want to move back 0.1. We're going to use the same speed, I guess. That seems fine. So to move back, we just go the negative direction. What we're doing is instead of making this position on Z become 0.1 and then 0.2 and continuing to move it by 0.1 each time, instead of going to positive numbers like that, we just want to subtract from it. We want to go negative numbers. So all we need to do is where it says player speed, we add a minus sign before it. Minus player speed. Easy. Save. Let's test it out. Here we go. There we go. So W moves forward and S moves us backwards, backs us up. Yeah. Now that he's closer to the camera, kind of seems like the speed is all right. I don't know. If he's running fast, it seems fine. Depends on what we want the game to feel like. Okay. Good. So now I'm gonna paste this thing a couple more times and get myself the other two keys, the A and D keys for the side to side. Paste and paste. Okay, so we've got two of those. This one's gonna be for the A key press, and this one's gonna be for the D key press. Now, we actually don't want transform.translate anymore. I'm going to just delete those. Now, here's why. If we use transform.translate, then what that's going to do is our character, when we go side to side, is literally going to go side to side. We don't want him to walk sideways. That's not at all what we want we don't want to always be facing north or whatever and never be able to look east, west, or south. That's not how games are supposed to work. So what we actually want to do is, instead of getting to the position and translating the position, instead we want to access the rotation. So we're going to want to rotate the character so that he faces south, east, and west, or whatever. Now, the trick is, which axis do we need to rotate him around? So think of it like this. If you have the x-axis is side to side. So if you stuck a skewer through this guy and then spun him around it, which way would he turn? And you can actually see that just by grabbing the letter X here in the rotation and turning him. So he actually will spin that way. And that is not at all what we want to have happen when we press the side-to-side things. If we rotate him around the y-axis, then we get this. And that actually is, I think, what we want from the side-to-side keys. So we're going to rotate him around the y-axis. Just for giggles, if we rotate him around the z-axis, what does that look like? Well, that spins him that way. So again, yeah, rotating around the z-axis is not what we are after. So, okay, the actual function, we're still going to the transform component, transform dot, now we're going to go rotate. So instead of transform.translate, transform.rotate. And yes, we're putting in a vector 3 again. Transform.rotate, and we're going 0, comma, because we don't want any x-axis rotation. That x-axis rotation turns his face down towards the ground and his feet up in the back. That's not what we want. And here, I don't think we want to use the same variable for player speed. We want to have a different variable to rotate here. So before we actually write this in, let's go up to the top and make a second variable here, public float, and player rotation, I don't know, player rotation speed. How's that? I like that just fine. A little bit long, but it tells us exactly what that is and what it's for. So now I'm going to say player rotation speed. And then my third number of the vector 3 is going to be 0, because we don't want any of that heads goes down to the right while feet swing up to the left kind of a thing. Okay. And then we may as well just take this, and we already know that we can reverse the direction of that by pasting it in here and giving ourselves a minus sign. Okay, so having a positive number in here when we rotate around the y-axis makes us turn one direction, and putting a minus sign in there makes it go the opposite direction. Piece of cake. Okay, so let's save. Come back over here, and Unity is going to read our new save information, and there's our rotation speed. So let's just, we put 0.1 in the player speed. Let's put 0.1 in the rotation speed and hit play and see what we've got. So forward and backward works, and the side to side, it is doing something. Yeah, he's slowly coming around. Okay, so we have a completely different kind of number that we're going to need to have in here. 0.1 is freaky slow. I'm still holding. He's turning so slow. Okay, so let's put 1 in there and see what that. Click back into there. Okay, that's a lot better. We can actually see him turn now. It's still really slow. Let's put in I don't know. Let's put in 3. That's getting closer. I feel like it's probably still too slow. Let's make it 5 and see what that looks like. That might be doable. Again, once we get the game really, we get the second character in there and we actually start battling each other, we can decide if it feels like it's too fast, if it feels like it's too slow, and then we'll fine tune it before we theoretically would be releasing this to the public for random people to play. And if we want them to just have fun out of the gate, then the speeds all have to be right. It has to meet their expectation as to what this thing is going to be. So right now, we are in play mode and we made changes here. When I take us out of play mode, the changes are going to go away. So just remember that we put a 5 in here and we go out of play mode. It kept the 5. I've never seen that before. Ah, there we go. As soon as I clicked out of it, it took it out.